I happened to be sitting in the office of one of the legendary educators of our nation and the world, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. But I'm also tonight participating in a conversation about an exceptional woman who was an educator. First of all, Sister Coretta Scott King was the primary educator of her four children, a role that so many women play. But when we think about all that she did as a civil rights worker, as a women's rights advocate, she did that by teaching us. That is who she was. Today, when I look at our schools, my heart weeps because today our children are still going to school based on the color of their skin, the zip code in which they live, when every child in our nation should have the right to a quality education. It is, after all, the single most consistent means, as President Nelson Mandela said, it is the most consistent means for changing the world. And so as we celebrate Sister Coretta Scott King's 95th birthday, I lift her up, not only as a beloved friend, but as one of the greatest teachers of our time.
So, Dr. Cole, how do we go about eliminating the problems that we have in our educational system? How do we continue Mrs. Coretta Scott King's legacy of eliminating those deeply interwoven threads of racism from the fabric of our educational system? How do we do it?
I know this. We don't do it by what's going on in our nation right now. I am appalled by the invasion of our educational process by individuals who have a political agenda. Sister Monica, we are living in a time where books are being banned. This is not South Africa back in the period of apartheid, when somebody put on the list Black Beauty, a book about a horse, and the book was banned in South Africa because the thought was that the beauty of Black people was being lifted up. We don't save and advance our educational system by saying that we cannot go back into history and her story to understand the origins of systemic racism. Our democracy is under attack through attacks on our educational system. And then I must say, as I know my sister and such an extraordinary educator, Becky, will remind us, we are living in a time when our teachers are profoundly undervalued. Not only are they being told what they can and cannot teach, and anything that's got to do with race or systems of inequality cannot be taught. They are consistently being undervalued in terms of their pay. And so if there's any struggle we've all got to stay in, it is the struggle for the rights of all children, but certainly for those who have had that right so consistently denied, children of marginalized communities. We must protect their right to a quality education.
Well said. Well, Ms. Pringle, as president of the National Education Association, the National Association of Education, you've got a focus right now of ensuring the systematic and fair treatment of people of all races should be happening in the schools. But as Dr. Cole just said, not only are teachers being told what they can't teach and books being removed, but teachers are under fire for even just trying to do their jobs. What is your association trying to do to protect the rights of teachers and children?
Oh, Monica, it is so good to be with you in this space. I am just coming off of visiting the King Center and having just such an incredible conversation with Dr. King. So I am honored to be in this space. And can I just say amen? Can I start there? Can I just say
Yes.
start there? Yeah. Amen, Dr. Cole. Can you just travel around the country with me? Could you do that, please? Because every educator throughout this country needs to hear you talk with such passion and commitment and dedication and respect of the people who have dedicated their lives to educating America's children. Thank you so very much for standing with us. Of course, as a longtime educator, you would do that. But I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the 3 million members of the National Education Association. I have the honor of representing. We are the nation's largest labor union. And when I took the office of presidency 2 years ago, ladies, in the middle of a pandemic, who planned that? I laid out a vision for our organization, which was to unite not just our 3 million members, but the entire nation to reclaim public education as a common good, as the foundation of this democracy. So thank you, Dr. Cole, for lifting that up, that our democracy is under threat. It is real. But we can't stop there, can we? Because you and I both know that public education was actually never designed to be what we know it must be, which is a racially and socially just and equitable system that prepares every student, every single one to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. That is the work that I laid out for our organization, and that is the work that we are engaged in as I speak. Maya Angelou lovingly recalled the words of the woman whom she shared the title "Chosen Sister," uh, Coretta Scott King, and I am so pleased to be in this space celebrating her and all that she brought to this world, her own work, even as she worked alongside of her husband, Dr. Martin Luther King. Maya said, "Peace and justice should belong to all people everywhere, all the time." I want to thank Dr. Bernice King for inviting me to be here in this space today. And knowing that she, like her parents, understand that peace and justice are the framework that upholds our shared responsibility. It's our shared responsibility to provide every student with a just and equitable education that allows them to get that access and opportunity and all of the support that they need and they deserve to live into their brilliance. I, of course, am honored to be here with all of the Black women in this space that have joined me. But here's the thing. We all have sisters and aunts and cousins who have taught us and pushed us and pulled us to stand in our power and to always speak the truth for our children as well as other people's children. And so when I think about the work that we absolutely must do together in this moment, it is the work of justice. It is the work of equality. It is the work of freedom. It is the work of the foundation of this democracy, and that is education.
So my question, Ms. Pringle, is a simple one for those mothers and we hope fathers also watching right now. What can you do as a parent in your local school to make sure your child gets educated properly?
So I taught science, Monica, to middle level learners, the wonders of science, for over 30 years. And this is what I know, that we as educators cannot possibly do this alone. And our first partners are our parents. Those parents are the ones who send their beautiful children to us to continue to nurture and inspire them and allow them to grow. And so we need our parents to stay actively involved. First, please continue to do the work we know you have already started in getting to know not only your children's teacher, but all of the educators in those schools, not just our teachers, it's our support staff, our counselors and nurses, it's our bus drivers and food service workers, all of those adults in that system who help to provide the education our kids need and deserve. So get to know them, and then understand that as partners, we have to make sure that the people in positions of power, those who are elected or appointed or hired, respect educators and parents to make the best decisions for their students. Dr. Cole talked about the fact that as educators, we too often are not respected as the professionals we are, with that professional authority and collective autonomy to make those kinds of teaching and learning decisions that allow for us to be honest in teaching the complete history of this country, that allow us to create that space for our students to have those challenging conversations about that history playing out today, and us all seeing that light shining on the inequities, not just in the education system, but in every other system that compounds to determine whether our students show up prepared to learn every day. So we need our parents partnering with us in demanding those just systems that we know our students need.
So you're getting, I was going to say, Dr. Cole, you have to deal with the students who come from these schools. How can those on higher education reach back and make sure our children are ready for higher education?
Well, first of all, by remembering what we were taught through the action of our sheroes like Coretta Scott King. And that is, the doing for others is just the rent you got to pay for your room on earth. And so if you manage somehow to gain an education and think that it is your little precious possession not to be shared by others, then you have not been fully educated. I also just want to say so badly, if I may, Sister Monica,
Please.
that I'm thinking about a so-called owner of enslaved people back in Mississippi who said this: education and slavery are incompatible. Today, when we deny our children, whether it's in the first grade or in a college or a university, a genuine education, we are, and I mean what I am saying, we are practicing a form of enslavement. Our children cannot be truly free without a quality education. And guess what? That's why so many prefer for our children not to receive a quality education. That relationship between education and systems of inequality, racism, sexism, heterosexism, it is an intimate relationship. And then I just have to say, Sister Educator Becky, if only we could clone you, and spread you not just around our country, but our world. Because until we understand the centrality of quality education, we will never be able to complete our struggle for freedom and for justice.
So, what would you want our takeaway to be, keeping in mind the hopes and dreams of Mrs. Coretta Scott King when it comes to education, not only for our children, but for the support of our teachers? Both of you.
Becky?
So, Dr. Cole, as you were talking, I was thinking of bell hooks, activist and an educator. And the reason she came to my mind as you were talking is that she talked about education. What she said was to educate is the practice of freedom. I just want that to sit with you for a minute.
Say it again.
Now I'm going to say it again. To educate is the practice of freedom. And the reason bell hooks came to my mind in this moment, Dr. Cole and Monica, is because Dr. King right now, Dr. Bernice King right now, we had a conversation about the work that actually we co-created and presented together way back in 1980. The NEA worked directly with the King Center to develop training and produce and to conduct the training on nonviolence and how in 1980, so that was a while ago, but in 1980, how we make that real in that moment. And one of the things that Dr. King said to me last week was, Becky, one of the things we have to remember is that we have to center our work in love. Mm-hmm. And that's why, bell hooks came to me, because we all know, her talking about choosing to love and how that moves against fear and alienation and separation, that the choice to love is the choice to connect and to find ourselves in the other.
Dr. Cole, you have the last word.
Must be, Dr. Cole.
Well, it does seem to me that our sister, Mrs. Coretta Scott King, was an exemplary educator because she herself never stopped learning.
That's right.
She may have begun in that civil rights movement with her husband, but she learned about other movements, and she was a champion for women, for indigenous people, for the LGBT community. She never, ever stopped learning. But she also understood that to make sustainable change, we have to build institutions. And that is why, of course, she founded the King Center, now led by our beloved Dr. Bernice King. It was she who said, stop what you're doing on this day. Learn what Dr. King taught us. It's not a day off, it's a day on to learn and to engage in change. Coretta Scott King was a masterful teacher, and we celebrate her, we love her, and most of all, we must carry on her work.
All I can say is thank you both for dropping those gems and wonderful quotes. You two have been a great start to tonight's conversation.